Mario Kart World has a problem. If you watch any high-level gameplay, you may notice that most players are driving the same lines and taking the same shortcuts as each other all the time. This is because nearly every track in the game has a lack of viable backup strategies for players to use, so they have to just go for the primary strategies every time and just hope they can survive. This of course causes a lot of chaos, and often it just comes down to who has the better item or not getting unlucky with the lag. It is quite a big issue. So in today's video, I'm going to show you all the backup strategies and paths I could think of on the tracks, many of which you could bring into your gameplay to help avoid some of the chaos. On Mario Bros Circuit, the first rail shortcut can be difficult to survive on if anyone near you has an attack item, since they take the rail path themselves when they're thrown. So, if you have an item like a golden mushroom, you can instead drift to the left of the rail to avoid attaching, then take a tight line to both go faster than those on the rail and avoid all the items they throw. At the end of the track, there is also a backup method for the final mushroom shortcut. If you hold a charge jump as you drive off the road here, you can use a mushroom when you land and then release the charge jump on this part of the green rail, getting you all the way over to the rock next to the boxes. Towards the end of Crown City, the rail turn followed by the tree bounce can be pretty scary and inconsistent. Getting bumped or hit off is fairly common, but thankfully there is a backup shortcut you can do if that happens. By tricking off the edge of the grass, you can land on the wall, then let yourself detach to get onto the rooftop, which you can then trick off to land on the other side of the off-road in a boost. On DK's spaceport, the gap jump at the beginning is fairly difficult to do when getting bumped around, which is why the backup method for it can be useful. If you go onto the right path, you have a lot more height to make it over the gap. Bumps will probably still happen, but you do have more leeway for it to still work. Shy Guy Bazaar has a few viable alternate paths throughout to give yourself space from other players. In the start, you can charge jump onto this left rail, then do a sequence of rail tricks and wall rides to get all the way up to this top rail where there is an item box to grab. Then you're perfectly set up to take the grass shortcut on the next turn. Another strategy you could try is to drive towards the left ramp after the S-bend, trick up onto the rail, then trick back onto the road before the left side of the ramp, with the rail still giving you the boost effect to keep a high speed. For this strategy to be fast, you need to trick left as soon as you get onto the brown rail, since landing directly on the ramp rail will slow you down a lot. If you do it right though, it's hardly slower than the normal wall ride strategy, so it can be pretty helpful if you have items to navigate around. On Wario Stadium, the right rail at the start can be difficult to survive on, so sometimes you're better off staying on the bottom path and doing the original world record strategy. When tricking onto the two walls, try to be as parallel as possible when you land, since that keeps you low for reduced airtime. If you play with a teammate, it can be helpful to know some backup paths that can nullify a shock, since you can coordinate the shock timing with them to gain an advantage over your opponents. For example, on Sky High Sunday there is a hidden glider path below the boost ramp, which you can get to quickly with a trick between the pink and yellow roads. It is of course slower than the regular paths here, but keeping your momentum when the shock happens will make it worth it. On Wario's Shipyard, the primary method for the shroomless shortcut is to just hop through the off-road after a water bounce. But to avoid all the items being thrown, you can instead go all the way to the left after the rail trick, then drift over the broken part of the ship to make it past the off-road, releasing a mini-turbo on the other side to keep your speed. At the end of the track, you're supposed to jump across the two rails above the water, but as we already know, rails are dangerous in this game. So if you want to play safe, you can instead gather a charge jump in the cannon, then trick off the pole on the right to land on this small ledge, getting you away from the potential boomerangs and triple red shells on the normal route. On Peach Beach, there is hardly any opportunity to take a different line to everyone else and not lose much time. The only example I could find was this boost ramp path in section 2, just in case you're surrounded by triple items and don't want to risk getting hit out before the mushroom shortcut. Salty Speedway has many different paths, but players will still generally go for the fastest lines, such as doing this trick sequence in the middle to make it onto the top path, which often results in getting hit out thanks to this rail being one of the best trap spots in the game. Despite this, people have somewhat forgotten about the old strategy here, even though it can still be helpful. By tricking closer to the end of this rail, you can land on the flat part of the next rail, then do a right trick into the pole followed by the tree, then you can wrap around the platform to get into the water on the bottom path. On Great Question Block Ruins, the first shortcut can be very packed, so you risk getting bumped around or a head bounce sending you off the track. To avoid this, you can do a right trick off the slanted rail in the grass to land on the road instead of the curved rail, eliminating the possibility of getting hit by anything as you land. In the middle of the track, the fastest line is to go on this right rail, then trick off the pole to set yourself up for the ending sequence. But a lot of the time, this can be quite risky to go for online. So, if you feel like the rail is too dangerous, then you should instead go on the cloud path on the left, as it is not too much slower, but it's so much safer, and you can still do the pole trick with this path. If you want to go for a double item box on the final item set here, sometimes there will be multiple people fighting you for it, and if you miss this box it can be catastrophic for your race. To avoid that possibility, you can instead trick up this wall to get onto this top path, where another double item box is there free to be grabbed. This path is slower than just drifting over both the clouds on the bottom, but the potential time loss of missing the box entirely easily justifies this path in certain situations. Like Salty Speedway, the old strategy in the middle of Cheap Fall seems to have been forgotten about thanks to the Tarzan shortcut being so prominent. However, the waterfall charge jump shortcut on the bottom path can be very helpful if you ever can't go for Tarzan or just fail it. By releasing a charge jump at the bottom of this waterfall, you can get a lot of height, landing on the same ledge as you would for the Tarzan shortcut, skipping all the off-road on the bottom. On Dandelion Depths, the top path after the first long turn is very slow, but it is still pretty helpful when trying to get good items and some coins. Since the item set on top is earlier than the set on the bottom, you will still be behind anyone that slows down for a box on the bottom if you go on the top, making it easier to get better items. Then straight afterwards there are 2 boost panels to help you begin your comeback. The ending of Drybone's Burnout has a few methods, but the only one worth including in this video is this one, where you stay on the top path until the end, trick into the right wall to get onto the rock, then trick perpendicularly off the rail to land on the left wall, which gives you the momentum and height to fly over all the lava. This strategy is not much faster than just going around after the rock, but once again it could be very good if there's a shock used, or if you just need to give yourself some space from other players. On Moo Moo Meadows, the tree shortcut with a mushroom is really fast and easy to learn, but doing it without a mushroom is one of the most difficult shortcuts in the game to pull off, absolutely not worth going for online. What you can do instead though is trick off the edge of the road in between these 2 white lines, then gather a charge jump in the grass, releasing it quickly to get over the ledge. You may have to crash through the fences on the other side if you're in first, but it would still be faster than going around the turn. Toad's Factory has a similar top path as Dandelion Depths, as you can do a wall ride at the start to get 3 coins and an extra item box before the first travelator straight away. When you're in the bottom spots, this can be very helpful, since getting an extra item box will increase your odds of pulling a broken item like the bullet bill. And of course, having the extra coins is nice as well. At the start of any Bowser's Castle race, most of the room will be going for a version of the gap shortcut, which results in a lot of players getting bumped or hit out and losing a lot of time. So, rather than joining in on the chaos, you can instead go on the top path at the very start, drive it in the simplest and safest possible way, and you will almost certainly end up ahead of half the room automatically. Straight afterwards there is an item set to get mushrooms, so by the end of the lap you'll probably be in the front anyway, given you don't get hit out in the second half of the track. On Acorn Heights, the double rail version of the pole shortcut is difficult to pull off perfectly every single time, so I prefer to do the charge jump version from the bottom instead, since all you need to do is get the trick timing right off the wall and it will never fail. It is a slightly slower method, but getting it closer to 100% of the time is worth it in my opinion. If you're in first on Mario Circuit, there is a dash food you can grab that can be quite useful during section 3. One thing you can do is use it in the off-road straight afterwards, then gather a charge jump to land directly onto the wall in the off-road of the next turn. Of course, without the dash food this wall is faster too, but this method just makes it a lot easier to aim for. A different option is to use the dash food in the small bit of off-road on the inside of the U-turn, since all the other patches of off-road can be drifted through without any boost. The glider path at the end of Peach Stadium is an even better version of the Dandelion Depths top path, since you get a box in a lower spot for less time loss, plus you get the added benefit of a shock helping you out thanks to the glider momentum. I personally take this path quite often. It is so nice to get good items on this final item set to set yourself up for the next lap, or even on lap 3 to try and get a last minute shock dodge. Finally, on Rainbow Road, the smart steering version of the section 2 gap cut is a really helpful thing to learn. On the glider at the start of the section, you have a lot of time to turn on smart steering, then you can drive the rest of it like normal until the split path. After the item set, you can stay on the left side, then do a combination of turning and braking whilst in a charge jump. If you use your mushroom just before releasing the charge jump, you will get more than enough height to clear the gap, given that you don't go too far to the left and get picked up by Lakitu. This is of course slower than the world record version of this shortcut, but it is a lot easier to pull off, and of course still much faster than taking the turn normally. And that is all the backup strategies and paths in the video. Let me know if I'm missing any in the comments down below. Also, I would love to hear what you think about this problem in general. Is it significant or is it not that big of a deal? Either way, hopefully some of the things I've mentioned here can help you deal with this problem. And if you enjoyed, could I ask you to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel? I'd really appreciate it. Thanks for watching.